Hernandez, Rick Smith, Howard Tallman.
Here.
Everybody rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open tonight with a public hearing on the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget. And with that, we'll open the hearing. Are there any questions from the public with regards to the budget? Okay, and with that, the budget hearing will be closed. Good. Next, we have acceptance of gifts and donations, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $1,000 from Chris Brady to be shared equally between the District 428 pre-kindergarten program and Brooks Elementary School. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Algren.
Yes.
Harry Malak.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Howard Tallman.
Yes.
With thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brooke, could you address, I know Chris Brady has donated this amount of money for years. And what it goes towards.
To Brooksburg, this is the 5th year, and then last year, we started sharing it with the ELDC. We used it last year. We opened the Chris Brady Play Lab at Brooks, which is a area where our social workers and some of our special programs can go in and do dramatic play and play-based therapy with our students. We've also used it in the past for our to increase the books in our library.
Very generous.
Next, we have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not important. Do we have any cards tonight?
No worries.
Thank you. Next is board committee reports and correspondence. What do you want to?
I'll just say that I was at the insurance committee meeting the other night, and that I really don't need to say much more because WL Benefits is here tonight and will explain what was covered in that meeting. It was a well-attended meeting, and it was a good thing for me, and eye opener first time on my participation in that committee. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. We did have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Communications committee met yesterday in high school. Spoke very specifically about board goal related to communication. And we wanted a little bit of guidance from the board as far as the breakdown of where labor ought to be done on these types of, how we assess things. As we want to communicate better with the general public, we're asking mostly teachers and other members of the employees how it is that we're going to measure our ability and changes. And I expect that many people among the staff know an awful lot about measurement. And so I think it comes down to a matter of trust that we take recommendations for what communication changes we're going to make and how they will be measured from the communications committee, which will meet again next month. And they're very well aware that whatever we do and don't communicate will be communicated by other sources anyway, most likely the Chronicle. So we want to be out ahead of our communications. That was my general gist of the meeting. And several people who attended are here tonight. And, if anybody wants to add anything to that, you're welcome to.
I will. So one of the big things that we've been talking about communications committee is the fact that we used to have a tech rep in each building, and now we don't. We did away with that differential because we don't really utilize it as much as we should. but we really, really need a differential for this communications person in our building. And we've been waiting probably for a good year and a half to hear from the school board on if they're gonna go ahead and pass this. And so I think it's something that the school board really needs to set as a priority. If you guys expect us to communicate with that, I think we really need that differential on that.
Thank you, Billy. The FFAC met last Thursday. Most of our meeting was talking about bond restructuring with Raymond James, and that went really well. We have a recommendation to bring to the board tonight with that. We also talked about the charge to the committee, which is also based on a board goal of running with a balanced budget. So that was sent to the FFAC. And that's really kind of what the whole meeting was pretty much bond restructuring discussion. We also, just to let everybody know, the Dekalb Education Foundation fundraiser is coming up on September 30th at Fernandez in Dekalb. They do have a band, the Party Doctors is playing, and there will be food served. So anybody who'd like to come, tickets are available through the DEF website. Anything else? We have presentations next, and we actually are going to flip the order of the presentations tonight. We're going to actually have 5-star go first tonight. So let me just read this. The 5-star students presentation, and this is a discussion informational item. And Mr. Sykes, Ms. Larson, Ms. Ellsworth, can present for us. If you guys want to come up here, I guess.
Sure.
or-
Sure. Up to you.
Thank you.
You bet.
I said, do you really have to talk?
Let him go first.
Great.
How about that?
Right, thank you for listening to us tonight. Over the course of the summer, I had some discussion with some athletic directors outside of our conference about student involvement in activities here at athletics. We felt like last year our student sections were maybe not where they had been quite the years before, so I was just chatting with some other athletic directors about what they do, and they started to tell me about some different programs that they used and how they try to reward kids for coming to games and what have you, and all this kind of stuff. Then I came back to the school and I met with some people within our district, and I had found out that a couple of years ago, I called Elizabeth because I heard that Turf Jones had made an offer to the district about getting something that was called 5-star students into our district. So I thought, well, let's start right here at home. And so she and I had a very good conversation on the phone, and we're going to explain a little bit more about what the program's like. But initially, I thought that we want to get our kids more involved outside of the school hours and what we do, and bring some of that school spirit back. So, as the assistant AD, I was looking primarily in an athletic area, but knew the importance of our activities, as well as our theater and our drama and choir, and trying to cross everything that we have in school. So these two young ladies were gracious enough, both Elizabeth and Joelle, were gracious enough to come into the school and met with Donna and two of our dean of students this summer. And that's where we started kind of getting the ball rolling here. So.
And also pinpointing on our differential discussions and just throughout the school day of just really keying in on those particular students that we can really identify to build more relationships with them. This gives us the opportunity to actually pinpoint, what students are not attending certain clubs or activities. What is it that we have that we might have the resources to offer these students, and really key in on that group of individuals that could benefit from the start of some sort of club or something that they don't know that's even available to them, and really find those particular students. And another thing that they introduce, which they'll obviously elaborate on, is the piece of more of a built-in PBIS of, you do look at those students that can't stay after school because they need to babysit or have jobs and things like that. This will also allow us the opportunity to really really hit home with those rewards of, hey, you know what, you were in the hallway with the hallway pass, here's why don't you get an extra point? So it's not necessarily just targeting those activities or athletics or choir or anything, or all of those components. We also have the opportunity to say, hey, you know what, this period lunch, they really did a great job in our custodial staff, so that they cleaned up those stuff after their lunch. Then that period of lunch can plug in and allow extra points. So we can also have some friendly competitions without just keying in on our athletes or choir and things like that. But they can elaborate more on specific components for you.
And I think one other thing, it's going to allow us to gain the data we need to see where our kids are at. I think some of the most interesting things were things we found out there's many schools in the area that use this program, so it's not like we have to recreate the wheel, but we can build it in Dekalb's way, and we can start out slow. But you look at a school like West Aurora, where I think the percentage was West Aurora felt like 70% of their students were engaged in all this stuff, and I think the number was 44% of their kids were engaged, and they were just stunned by those numbers. I would say that in hearing that, I would have thought we would have had a much higher rate in Dekalb than what we probably actually do. But I'm guessing that we have maybe 30% of our kids who are actively involved. And that's just a guess. But this is going to give us the opportunity to collect that data. We're going to see how many kids are going to the different clubs, whatever they do. This is going to allow us to track that through their system, and we don't have to do the pencil and paper method anymore. So we can use their services, as well as the increase in maybe our yearbooks and getting our kids more involved in their school. If you're on Twitter, and things have started off pretty well, I think Winnie has talked a little bit and some of the things we're doing around town, but I'm seeing kids tweet that they love their school. And I think this is what we want to use to help reinforce how the kids actually love their school. So I think this is going to provide us maybe a gateway to down the road, checking to see how involved our kids are and knowing how important it is for them to be involved in extra things. The success rate, I mean, that data and those statistics are all over the place. So we want to know. So we know that many of you on the board right here today, I'm sorry, you, Mr. Hallgren, have already heard this stuff, but maybe just a quick overview of what you're offering.
The 5-star student program is really simple. It's a way of tracking kids that are going to events, that are involved in activities, and by default, you find the kids that aren't doing any of those things. Statistically, you all know as school board members and the superintendent, you know that the kids that are involved in one or more extracurricular activity are the kids that succeed. They attend school at a higher rate. They graduate with their class. They achieve their personal bests, and they're involved. School spirit, because of that, then rises, and then more kids want to get involved. So the whole basis for this program is getting kids to engage in something outside of just their schoolwork. So whether it be the electronic gaming club or the sci-fi club or the football team, dance, poems, music, whatever it is, if they get involved in something and they're plugged into something at the school, their chances of success are much higher, exponentially, than the kid that just goes home from school and doesn't do anything. So that's what this program is all about. Why have we brought it in the last 4 years to 40 different schools in the state of Illinois? Because we at Herff Jones, on the yearbook side and the cap and gown and class ring side, we are always looking for ways to give back to schools to say, hey, thank you for allowing us to be in your schools. We do little things. We donate to boosters. We donate, faculty gowns. We do what we can to schools, but this is a program that we could really sink our teeth in. As a former Dekalb High School student who was in athletics, in student government, in pep club, and all those things, I had a great student experience. Not all kids do. And so when I heard about this program, and it was a colleague of mine in California that started this company, we brought him in to speak to the Illinois Director of Student Activities, and all of those schools in their program that were on the board jumped on immediately. So these are schools that, by tracking students via their student ID and their, and a scanner, boom, they come into a football game, they go to a civics debate, they go to a play, or they show up to a student council meeting, they can log in and you can then track that they're participating in something. And the whole program is geared toward, you could start very simply. You could simply use it as a program to, sell homecoming tickets and track who gets on the bus to go for prom, who gets on the bus to go to post prom. So you can just track kids that way, or you can take it all the way to the nth degree and start giving points for students. Certain points for them to be in clubs and activities, certain points for them to go to clubs and activities, and certain points just for doing good things around the school. And you're talking about the PBIS. So you can allow students to achieve little successes by giving them points, and then all of a sudden it becomes kind of a fun game to obtain more points, and then they're seeking to be more involved and more involved. And as they get involved, then they engage in school, and school becomes more successful for them.
I would think this would be incredibly freshman heavy. In other words, once they become a senior or once they become a junior and establish habits, that it's less effective, or this program would be. Do you focus on freshmen, or do you just focus on absolutely school-wide? This is
How many seniors are on your football team? How many seniors are in student council? How many seniors in POMs, music, dance?
And the beauty of this program is it can run a real report for you that quickly and tell you those numbers. And it's a direct correlation on, like she said, student engagement. What school is it?
Vernon Hills.
Vernon Hills has been running reports showing direct correlations between GPA and student engagement. And it's huge. And that data that we can pull from, we pull data for everything else, all of the grades, all of the testing, all of the reading programs. But we're missing a huge component of what high school really is for students. It's the classes, but how many of us remember what we learned in English freshman year? How many of us remember what being on a football team was like, or being in the play was like? Those are the things that plug kids in. And in order for us to figure out who that is, instead of pencil and paper pushing these things together, which these guys don't have time for, Greg created a program that does this for us immediately, real-time data. And those reports are amazing for them to use, to really plug in. And I think Western Aurora was very, very surprised when they realized less than half of their student body was plugged into something. And again, if we don't even want to use it for the reward base, that tracking, we can just start off with that tracking so that we can find that 56% who aren't plugged in. And why aren't they? Are we asking those questions? And if we're not, we should be, because you've got 56% of your kids who are missing out on a huge part of what high school is really all about. And do we need to find different programs for them to be a part of? Manuka loves to use it for Spirit Week. So again, you do have those kids who can't come before school, can't stay after school, can't be involved in sports for whatever reasons, but they can show up at Spirit Week in their pajamas. We've all got pajamas to wear to school. It's going on this week. In fact, today was Dad Day. So, again, we can track those kids, scan them at the lunchtime. Are you dressed up for Spirit Week? That engages students. That gets spirit going. And then they run a class contest. So it's the freshmen against the sophomores, against the seniors, against the juniors. And who gets the most points for that? What class has the most spirit? So you don't even have to incentivize with any kind of reward. At the senior level, though, all those points that they might accrue at the end, if we do decide to use a program to incentivize, it can be something as simple as being the first to walk across the stage to get their diploma.
So let's say they start as freshmen, and now they've accumulated the most spirit points. You recognize the top 10 kids. You recognize the top athletes with scholarships. The kids get recognized that are the top, in academics. But the kids that are the most involved, and they're B students, but they kind of run the school, and they are in charge of the spirit of the school. And how many times have you reached out to students and said, hey, seniors, we really need your help with this. We really need you to get behind us on this program. And kids will do that if you give them, incentives. So.
And I think once again, though, we can start at ground level. There's nothing, we don't have to jump right to that. We can go to these other schools and sit down and talk to them. Western Aurora, Nuka, whatever, contact who's ever in charge of this program and say, okay, what worked for you in the beginning? And I think we need to look at it that way. When you ask, is it going to be a freshman? The freshmen are the kids we need to get involved because they don't know about it. We had a student section meeting the other day, I had 133 kids there, 48 of them were seniors. So the ones that weren't represented are the freshmen, but we need to find ways to get them involved. We're going back to activity fairs. We're going to try to get our kids informed in what we offer and how can we help them become involved. But we got to find those kids that aren't doing it, and I think we can do that.
And for me, I like the incentive piece. I mean, but that's not the attractive part to me. It's the idea that who are the students who aren't involved? And there's the why. We need to get to that. Some kids just can't be here before or after school, but the kids who are involved in nothing. And the statistics that you know are out there about student engagement and what happens to graduation rates, what happens to GPA, because there is a correlation. And finding those kids who aren't involved, and as Donna said, get to the why aren't they involved? Maybe they just aren't aware of all the things we have and the opportunities. Maybe there are other things that they would like for us to have.
Right.
But trying to engage those kids who they just, they're just day students.
Right. And here's the nice part. It's free to you. Herc Jones donates this. This is a program that you use at our expense. So we're not selling you anything. We're not selling you anything but the opportunity to get DeKalb High School students engaged and to increase their success rates. That's all we're selling you. So if you want to use it, fantastic. We want you to use it.
So how long has it been available?
I think 5-Star has been up and running about eight or 9 years.
Okay.
We brought it to Illinois about, I would say, about 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Offered it to the district 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that presentation. I think you mentioned there were 40 schools in Illinois.
Yeah, at least 40 schools. Yeah.
Because that seems like a very low number.
Well, that's because there's only 2 of us. And
Many thousands. So,
Right, but the only way they know about it here is
is that
through us.
right? You two are the
Yeah,
reps.
well, and the other Herc Jones reps.
Presentations.
Okay.
So
Because we find it valuable to our school.
the company is out of California, so there's way more schools in California using this. But so the company is out of California, and
What's the distribution look like across the country?
very slow, because they really are going through basically Herc Jones reps. And so, for instance, there may be 30 states across the nation that don't even have a 5-Star
Yeah.
program in it.
Is there enough data yet to show distribution of adoption
Well, if you,
by state, say?
if
Or
it's working in your school, there are schools across this country that are using all sorts of programs to track student engagement.
Superfan.
Superfan,
So this
right,
is one of many then?
Yes.
one of many. So this is the 5-Star student program. And the one that a Superfan might cost the school about $2,500 a year.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do nearly what 5-Star does. 5-Star can be used, like I said, it's living and breathing. The kids that are walking into a football game, you can literally scan them in and say, we're going to pack the place against Sycamore tonight. We'll give everybody 5 points, 5 bonus points for showing up to the game tonight. So everyone comes into the game and they get 5 bonus points just for being there.
And it's useful in other areas such as prom. You can track students going into prom. You can track students going out of prom.
And time stamp it.
So it's time stamped at different dances, different organizations. There's a lot more benefits. The other athletic director I talked to was using that super thing, that thing, where they're paying them. But
They're paying all the money.
it just pays for athletics.
And the people that started 4 years, did you say 4 in Illinois? or-
Yeah,
Oh,
8 or 9
for
years ago, yeah.
They're staying with the program, I'm assuming. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
You said you had people that walked out of that meeting, everybody took it, that initial meeting of that group.
Right, it's Stevenson High School, Libertyville, Vernon Hills, Highland Park, Deerfield, the 2 Downers Groves, Oak Park River Forest, Manuka, the
And
Oswego's.
they're staying with it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
they'll love it.
Well, you even had Bolingbrook, didn't they switch and then decide to come back?
The Elgin and Larkin, because they went to Hero, which is more of an attendance program district-wide. So they dropped, 5-Star. And so I said, fine, it's up to you guys, we're paying for it, doesn't matter. And I'll be darned, 2 weeks later, they called and said, Elizabeth, can we have 5-Star back? It doesn't do what the other program does. And so we've reinstated them and they're using 5-Star again. So it's just a great program, and it's a win-win for you.
Yep.
People ask me all the time, why do you do it? I write a big check in August for all the schools that I pay for 5-Star. And because When my schools are successful, we're more successful. If kids cross the stage in caps and gowns, they're gonna have to buy them from me. All right, so it's everything is a win-win in this world. So the more students that are engaged in school and the better attendance rates you get, the better funding you get from your state, the more success rate you have from your students, higher graduation rates. You know, it all rolls into one, student engagement.
I mean, I think this is a good program. I think we can start out with whatever we want to start out with and grow at a pace that works for us.
You don't have to jump in with everything.
You don't
start
break
using
anything
it for one
using
thing.
it. You don't
Right.
break anything. It's
Right.
your data. It's the way you want to use it the first year. Western Work started just using it for tracking their first year. Oswego is using it for not only tracking, but also this year they're adding the element of no privileges. So if it shows up and he's not supposed to be there, they know that by scanning
You
it.
know, they scan them in immediately on the laptop. It shows the student's not supposed to be at this event.
Manuka, and I'm not sure how Dekalb checks in for dances. Anybody know?
It's like the prom.
Yeah.
Like a.
Yeah, no, there's the ID and.
ID, so you're
yeah.
checking the
Right.
list.
There's nothing.
2,400 students checked into Manuka's homecoming last year in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, it takes longer than that.
And they match on ID, and you can even, you have to
That's
that's
what they're
component
doing. Right.
where other kids are coming from other schools. That's part of the scanning in the event process. So
Last year, I raised this same point in regard to what it is that you put it on the table and offering. And to me, it still seems to leave out that kid whose parents say, you go to nothing, you are to be home at such and such a time. You don't necessarily even want to interact with other students while you're going to school. You just go there, you study, you get out. And that kid, with all this checking and all this upon them, is going to feel worse. And that concerns me, that somebody feels that if everybody else is having a great time and they're the one wallflower that is not.
but that's the second point of incentivizing if you want to use it for that. Again, right now, we're just tracking to find out who those kids are, because we don't even know who they are right now. We don't even know who they are.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I
That's a
agree.
good thing that we don't know who they are, because we don't want to pick on them.
No,
We don't want to identify them, we don't want to make them special, we don't want to make them a special category that's sought after. Because seeking after them is not what they want to get out of us.
Okay, let me just direct it this way. The kids can be involved without, you can generate data when you're going through your accreditation process. So you're asked questions about, school involvement and GPAs and correlations between things when you're going through the accreditation process. To get that data, this is hard data you're getting. So you can now download all the students that are 2.5 and above and how it correlates to somebody being involved in one or more or two extracurricular activity. And where is that saturation line? That if they get involved in too many things, where does it start to die off in the grade? It starts because they're over involved. Okay, so the data that you get is very powerful. There are ways that you can use this system without even doing the incentive program. So West Aurora High School, every semester they would, or every quarter, they would download the attendance and who was here. You'd get points just for showing up to school. You'd get points for not having a referral to the dean's office. You'd get points for approving a GPA, by a certain percentage. So you could get points. So it really is a good program because it does identify things. Vernon Hills High School, their board gave raises to staff based on success of students and getting students more engaged, because they saw the power in getting students engaged. So, but they needed hard data. And so they also needed to know, because they gave stipends for sponsors for clubs and activity, which clubs and activities were attended and which were successful and which were crossing over. So for instance, there may be 70 activities at Vernon Hills High School that a student can attend, and they're paying a stipend to all those teachers to be a sponsor for those activities. But now they're saying, okay, we've got this group of kids that aren't involved still, even though we have 70 activities for them to be involved in. So where are we missing the boat? So then they started tracking who's going to what club and what activity. And what they found is that there were some activities they could cut, not because the activity wasn't popular or the club wasn't popular, but because they found out because the kids going to this activity also, or join this club, also join this club and this club. So those kids were already engaged. So they knew that they could drop this without hurting the engagement of these students. But if they picked up a new club sponsored by a new sponsor, they would bring in these kids that didn't get involved in anything. You see what I'm saying? So the data is powerful that you get from this program.
This is sort of peripheral, but what I keep hearing in this discussion is all of this is through an ID that you carry, right? I mean, everything seems to be through the ID. In the schools that you are involved with, or this program is involved with, how many of those have lanyards, ID lanyards?
Almost all. I mean,
Almost
when
all.
I go into a school, there's a rare school that I go into where students don't wear the student ID.
ID lanyards,
Mhm.
right? Do we have ID lanyards?
We don't.
Seems that would expedite anything having to do with this. That's something that we should very much consider. Everybody else seems to have lanyards. It's something where you can get in the school, you get out of the school, you get into a program, you have the ID on the lanyard. You don't have it, you don't get in. That's
Students do have IDs, and it's issued as part of our contract with our yearbook company.
I understand.
So students, to move into a lanyard, as possible. The one downturn about that I will caution everybody is that, because I've seen districts do that, it does kind of slow up the dean's office because the amount of referrals for kids not wearing lanyards will go up.
For the moment.
Yeah, they carry their IDs. And so in the schools that I work with, they carry their IDs somehow.
Most of them look like this. It's
Yeah.
a barcode there.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm just curious as to whether, I know that there are districts where I've seen them where they have lanyard IDs. I just wondered whether this was something that, where they have that.
It's very common, but certainly not 100%.
Thank you.
Mark and Donna, you guys are seeing this as a positive for the high school.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think it's a two-edged sword. I mean, if you guys talk about all this, I can see how it's very powerful. I just completely rebel against the notion of tracking anybody. I don't like the stupid tollway iPass thing, right? I mean, I pay cash. And you know, I have to pay more because of how I feel about this, right? Quite a lot more.
I can see you doing that.
Yeah, no doubt.
But on your
When
student
they-
transcript, do you track all the classes that the student takes throughout his high school career?
Well,
Do you track the GPA of the students that,
you know what? There's a thing called mandated education, right? You know, from age 5 until age, what is it, 16 or 17 years old. The state law says you must be educated. Okay, you can be homeschooled, or you can be in the public schools, or you can be in private, but you have to be educated, right? It's mandated, okay? And all of our PBI, well, maybe not PBIs, but all of our academic data taking is relevant to providing good education to these kids. I worry a lot about, and I'm not completely against your program, okay, don't get me wrong. I mean, I can see where it's going to do some good things, but I also see some danger. That's why I call it two-edged sword, okay? I think people need freedom. I think they don't need to be tracked any more than they have to be tracked, and that bothers me. You know, that you will be tracking these kids who participate, and can they opt out?
they don't have to go to the events?
I mean, from having the lanyard, from having the ID.
If they walk
in the
in,
program.
if they walk into an event, they certainly do not have to be scanned.
Yeah, but do they have to have, are they, will they be issued, I guess?
I think that's a whole different conversation that we would have.
Okay, well, but it gets back to the thing about tracking kids, right? I believe we have to track kids so that we get reimbursed from the state, for instance. We have to know how many kids are in attendance today, right? So there's a tracking that's part of the mandated system, okay? We don't have to know how many kids go to some assembly after school or a football game or all these things. It may be good, and I agree that we could probably increase the success rate of some kids, but I'm also worried about the disparity. So there's two words in my mind right now, tracking and disparity, that bother me. And Howard, you touched on both of it with your comment, right? There are kids that will be working when they're not in school. Okay, there are kids that just aren't interested, or there are kids who, as Howard said, their parents are, you know, dominant or whatever you want, the word you want to use. They don't want the kids doing something other than what they must do.
Then when you
And-
find those kids in,
You
those are the
shouldn't
kids.
find those kids, that's my concern, is that those kids outside of the mandated reason for them being in school don't necessarily have to be found or identified or tracked or any of that, right? And that's where I have an issue. If we could somehow do the good part of the system and leave out the rest of it, I'd feel a whole lot better. And in my own mind, I haven't got to that place yet where I can understand how this could be implemented without the downside. That's the downside, and it may be small compared to the upside.
And I don't disagree with that, but maybe some of those kids want to be found and are waiting for somebody to find them.
with that.
I mean, those kids, you can't say that they don't want to be found, and maybe the parents are putting those restrictions on, but maybe those kids want to be found. And they're
Well,
looking
until
for
the kids are the
something.
age majority of the state they live in, and that it's up to the parents, not to the school, not to some association or company or anything.
Right, but in
To find those
many-
kids.
Many times we are the parent,
Well, we get forced into that situation. That doesn't mean it's good.
but those are the kids who want to be found.
All we're doing for the kids that are being found is providing an activity that they may be interested in, because of what we know that maybe we didn't know 20 years ago, that an engaged student has more success in school. That's
Well, and it's not
that's just the research.
It's not only that though. Do you guys agree with PBIS programs?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what I can say about that. I would need to study it more in depth. I've only been on this for a couple of years. You know, the whole thing, I remember sitting in the auditorium at the old high school when the first data taking information was rolled out and saying to myself, I'm an engineer, by the way, and I said, this is like being in Detroit looking at bumpers and nuts and bolts and engines and this part and that part of a car, trying to understand how do we build a better car. And of course, the United States went through that. Our cars versus Japanese cars, they were very good at tracking, at identifying. There's probably a bell curve distribution on these kids as to how much they want to participate or not, or how successful they'll be or not. Right? We get deep into the data taking aspects of things, and PBS is an outgroup for that. There's a lot we can understand, but I question, just my gut feeling questions whether we should go so deep. I just don't know.
No, I think one of the things is being an educator and being in classes and being with kids for 25 years here in the state. Kids want to be, maybe not every single one of them, but the majority of the kids want to be found, want to be recognized in class, want to be successful. They want a teacher to stand up there and say in front of class, you know what, Billy, you did a good job today. And maybe there's something at home that doesn't allow them to do that, but what kid doesn't want to be recognized for doing something good?
It doesn't necessarily have to be about the activities. It can be within the classroom.
I
Those
agree with
things can
that.
be happening at the classroom level.
Are we, is this up for?
Consensus to bring it back to the next. So, we'll bring it back. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And thank you for your work.
Thanks for putting up a mark.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
All down, Mr. Sykes.
I like that story about the driving over the game.
Let's move on here. All right, next we have the WL benefits group meeting presentation. And this is a discussion and information item.
As mentioned before, we have Paul Burns here, founder and CEO from WL.
Thank you.
And
Thanks very much.
he's going to share some preliminary information related to benefits, community purchases, and so forth.
Thank you. Good evening. We do have a presentation that's a summary and promise to be brief. We can get that up on the screen and I can share it with the audience and get set. We'll briefly go through the increase in the employee benefits program and renewals, I should say, relative to Blue Cross, the dental program, and the vision program, along with our recommendations and work we did to secure a renewal for you. And give you some explanation, if you don't mind, as to why the increase exists, why there is an increase, and what fuels that inside the insurance program itself. So if you allow me a bit of an education in terms of the process, a lot of things that you may not know. We were also asked whether a 2 or 4 tier system would work better in terms of how we charge our participants for the program. So we'll talk about that, its impact. We have a few review renewal options that you might want to consider as a board. And we'll go through that quickly. The next two screens, thank you, are about us. Please let me get through those. I'm not here to sell you on me, but we did put that in there to edify our positions. We were adamant to continue. Let's get right to the summary approach. The next screen, please. I'm sorry, the next one, I apologize. Okay, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois as our carrier, and currently we've had them here in place. We all know the reputation of Blue Cross Blue Shield as it relates to educators as being a premium plan and something that's important to them in terms of their benefits. It is one of those things that we know attracts them to work here, keeps them here. It's a retention tool also. So we're very careful about looking at other options. We do look at other options such as Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, and other programs that are available for rating comparison and for possible change of benefit plans. But we do know the impact and the cachet that Blue Cross Blue Shield has. So we're very sensitive to that as an overall strategy. We can share some of the things that are not here is we had a 107% loss ratio this last year. Now what that means is for every dollar they take in of our premium, they're spending $107 out. So right away you can see that we're upside down in terms of the premium collected and the premium paid out in claims. So therefore that alone would warrant an increase in premiums. If you add it to that, I think I have another screen that dictates some of this. You add not only to the loss ratio, there are other things that change. The demographics are more older people on the plan than younger that have been attracted into the plan because younger individuals spend less healthcare dollars, older individuals spend more. There's also the ACA. Our current administration in Washington has had no success in repealing the ACA. So of course there is 4% is the exact number that Blue Cross Blue Shield built into the renewal to cover the liability of ACA, the ACA reporting and the ACA mandates that are in there. So there's no action in Washington, so that 4% stays in. So of your increase, 4% of that cannot ever be really negotiated. It's in there to stay. So you have the loss ratio, you have the large claimants, which we'll talk about, not specifically, of course, and we talk about the overall trends. So medical insurance trends, yes, sir, I apologize.
What's a target? What would be a target loss ratio?
Blue Cross says it's about 88%, because then they have their admin costs above that, and then that would be ideal. So 107.
88 is what they're looking for?
That's what they're looking for, yes. Which is pretty industry standard. Now, a few things of information that given your group size, you are considered very credible, meaning that we have almost a direct correlation between your losses this year, next year, and we're not community rated. We don't use any other statistics to dictate our increase. We look specifically at what we've done as a group to dictate your future increase for the next year. So we do know that there were these other mitigating factors. There was also a number of very large claims in the group. If you'll continue on, we'll get through this. So the plan's loss ratio we talked about, 107%. The number of large dollar claimants and their prognosis and diagnosis, the ACA regulations, of course. And then, of course, the provider negotiations with the carrier itself, Blue Cross. Now, this is one reason why Blue Cross is a good choice, obviously. I'm not here to defend them. But the increases, the discounts that they can negotiate with hospitals and providers is obviously very important to us because every dollar of claim, we want to have that discounted as much as we can. Blue Cross obviously is sort of the 900-pound gorilla in Illinois in terms of getting the best discounts from the providers and from the healthcare facilities. We cannot share with you specific information quite naturally that's protected by HIPAA, but what we can do is tell you whether a subscriber or a spouse did have a condition and what the costs were. So far, you can see in our losses, this is just a cross section, the highest claimant so far, and there's plenty more below that. But we have a claimant at $836,000, and all of these are ongoing except one, meaning that the prognosis for the claim to continue is ever present and could be much more expensive. So if you just added that column on the right, in terms of paid claims together, you could see a large part of our overall renewals on just these claims is important. So when folks ask, why do we get an increase? I think it's important to show that our own losses do contribute quite significantly. United Healthcare offered us a proposal. Aetna, Cigna declined. We looked at other options, but these were name brand that you would know. United Healthcare said they would do it, but they would charge 14.5% above the current rates, effectively a 14% increase. Blue Cross started out at 10.9%. We got them down to 8.7% in terms of renewal. Interestingly enough, last year we had 110% loss ratio, so we're slightly better this year. And we had a 10.5% increase after negotiations last year. So this year we're actually trending slightly better.
So we're targeting 88 and we're hitting 107,
Yes,
right?
Yes, sir. Well, you're not targeting Blue Cross, yes, sir.
Right, that's where they'd like us to be.
Sure, thank
In
you.
order to change them to make a better rate.
Or give you a better rate or a pass on and rate increase, yeah.
Is that a significant increase over the last 5 years? I mean, were we ever at a far better rate, or at least a slightly better rate of we were always hovering above 100?
Sadly, school districts in general and healthcare in general, these two industries, overperform. They overutilize. So school districts are heavy utilizers of healthcare. Historically speaking, historically speaking.
Interesting.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
You bet. There's some industries we won't go near, like, I don't want to offend any attorneys here, but if there's an attorney present, that's a tough industry for us to ensure.
What a surprise.
Yep, you can imagine. What we have done is to show you what the current rates are. Remember, there are 4 plans here in the school district. There's 2 deductible PPO plans, 2 HMO plans. So what we've done is we've shown you the renewal rates and what that premium difference would be in a monthly basis. We further break that down in some summary that Ben has created for us that shows you what the actual per pay period deduction would be, and that's available after. And incidentally, for the board, we have a much larger presentation that's available for you. It's here in the room if you'd like to take it and study it.
Are these figures shown per year?
I'm sorry, this is per month.
That's just per month?
This is per month, yes. Yeah. So that's what healthcare is cost us per month, per single and per family. Now, there was a question, should we break that down to single plus one, single plus child, or children and family? And we have a negative impact on doing that. We'll share it with you. The next screen will show you your HMO changes. So we thought it was good to just illustrate what those would be. There's also Medicare primary for those older folks. There's no one in that category currently. Thank you, Adam. Okay, you can see then, continued for your edification, if we went to a 4-tiered structured rate. Now, this is important to understand the concept of this. If you charge less for a parent with just a child or children, or a spouse with an employee with just a spouse only, their rate goes down. That means the family rate goes up to cover the overall premium. Because you still have to cover those losses every year. So if you go to the next screen, we gave you a graphic illustration here of how the premium changes from 2-tier to 4-tier, we call it. Overall, 146 employees will see a premium increase, and only 46 saw a premium reduction. So that would be obviously not this hard, but we did the study for you to make sure that we gave you a clear understanding of why we're not doing a 4-tier structure. Okay, thank you. We have, as always, Blue Cross will give you, any carrier will give you reduction options, things you can change in the plan designed to bring down the renewal if you'd like to. So we could take the $750 deductible plan up to a $1,000 deductible with a max of 2 times per family and bring the rate down almost 1% to 0.7%. The other option would be to increase the $1,700 deductible that exists in the PPO plan 16189 to $2,500. And that would reduce your overall premium 1.8%. So there are options there for you to move that up if you like. Let's continue, please. Dental. Dental is interesting. We had a rather lively discussion about it in the insurance committee meeting, because if you think about it, dental is a scheduled benefit. We only cover so much per year, unlike medical, which you could incur tremendous losses. So you ask yourself, why is it we haven't increased at all? You had 107% loss ratio here. So MetLife, coming up at the end of their contract period, is giving us a rate increase of 29.56%. That's ostensibly saying they don't want business any longer. So when you get an increase that large, that's what they're saying. So we went to United Healthcare and I think 4 or 5 other carriers, and we did find United Healthcare had a far better dental network at a lower, not a lower rate than current, but lower rate than the renewal rate from MetLife. Our understanding is it has more dentists. We did the analysis of that. And there's certain dentists in town that get used, in this area that get used a lot, and we studied them specifically to make sure that any change wouldn't affect the majority of individuals.
What's our current cap on dental? 1,000?
1,500, I'm sorry. I was more focused on the numbers, I apologize. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Lowering that cap, perhaps.
Lowering the cap would help, that's correct, yes. That would be a decision. See it burn zero expense. What we're hearing from a dental plan in the state where these sorts of losses is that everyone is utilizing their maximum year after year. And it's no secret that if you waited to the end of the year and you had $1,500, you started your work and it dribbled over to January, you same $1,500 again and consume $3,000 in a very short period of time. So we are using the plan.
People think that there's money on the table before they use it.
That's how it's viewed, yes, sir. We have left $1,500 on the table. Exactly right. The other thing is you could increase the individual deductible to on the dental plan. So you could do that. We could provide that.
But the question is,
I'm sorry, I apologize.
it seems, the concept of loss ratio seems odd to me for the dental situation because it is a fixed amount. Right? Why the loss ratio in this application?
They actually will look at your demographics, the number of dependents, the number of spouses, the number of children under a certain age because you have more exposure. And they actually, in terms of the entire country, their loss ratio pool, project what they think you're going to spend. If they went to 107% loss ratio out of the gate in underwriting, your rate would be obviously absorbing you would want to plan. So they, again, they look at this 88% loss ratio, they figure the rates on that actuarially, they present you the rates by the program, and you use 107%. But I think your question is asking, if it's a structured plan, how would you pay 107%?
Well, it's the probability is obvious, right? I mean, as he said, it's cash on the table, right? The probability for medical procedures of all sorts is much less certain, than for this dental, right? So the concept of loss ratio makes no sense to me when it's applied to this kind of.
Oh, I don't disagree with that at all, especially in structured programs like that.
Yeah.
However, let's consider this. Dental inflation has continued to go up. Medical inflation is pegged at around 6%. There's no inflation that applies to anything else in this country outside of medical inflation. The trends at 6%.
I don't know. I think about dental implants, for instance, as a corollary to LASIK, eye lens shape changing. And when LASIK first came out, it was incredibly expensive. Right now, it's not very expensive. Same thing with implants. Okay, it's a different part of the body, different medicine, but implants have become less expensive over the last 5 years. So again, because it's such a precise part of medicine with respect to comparison to cardiology, for instance, it's predictable. The probabilities are known. So the rate increases, that are driven perhaps by the loss ratio for dental, that's a whole different ballgame than on the medical side.
Let me give you this perspective. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, our children were consuming a fraction of the sugar they're consuming today. And it's probably one of the factors that's driving our healthcare costs up. It's driving obesity in our constituency, and it's rotting our teeth. And so when a dentist finds, and I have dentist friends, when they find that something that they're providing at a cost is going down in cost, just like technology, new technologies invented to keep them billing for the progressive amount. Okay, so our teeth are going bad faster. We're coming up with new technologies to make them look better. There's veneers, there's all kinds of ways to restore your teeth. And there is dental inflation that outpaces medical inflation, if you can possibly believe it. Then I'll add to that dentists don't bring themselves together as a PPO network for discounts. Your dentist, as you've been in, dentist that's used in town here, it's cash on the barrel in many cases. My dentist doesn't even let me submit a claim. I have to pay and then submit my own claim. So dentists, and I pray there isn't one in the audience where I will get shot standing here. Dentists are very, people are very loyal to their dentists. We're on doctors in a PPO network. People will change. It's really an odd statement in society. So I hope I've educated it's likely. My recommendation, of course, is that you want to go with the same program that exists with maybe more dentists for a little bit less rate. United Healthcare is a very good choice for that as well. Yes, sir.
I, for one, I don't speak for the board, but I find that jump in the rate to be particularly unacceptable.
Some
I mean, I
understand.
don't, I can't, so I would say that looking at lowering the amount, I mean, lowering that number, or changing it in some fashion and giving us some choices on how that would work, I think that's certainly something that I would look for, because I can't accept that kind of rate, that kind of change in the
So
numbers.
I will promise you this by our next meeting.
Thank you.
Next
Thank
week.
you.
We'll have
I
myriad of-
don't mean to jam
No.
your presentation,
No, no.
but I'm looking for some sort of, and we have to get some, we don't have those kind of numbers to have.
Well, I'll also tell you that I have investigated if there's a scheduled plan, and I discussed it with Carrie in the last meeting, we might want to self-fund the program meeting. We'll just pay $1,000, we know what our actual liability is, we'll just pay that. The admin cost would be less than we could self-fund it on. Really, it is kind of a form of self-funding. You're getting 100% launch rate, so aren't you self-funding?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
So how do we work that? Now, there's also another opportunity, and I'm sorry to be long-winded. We could approach the dentist that we use the most of, because I have a list of them and how much we spent with them. And we could go and create our own sort of unique school district pupil plan with them and ask them to appeal to them for a discount for members of the school. And I'll be happy to do that on your behalf.
Well, I would look, you have all the experience here, so I would look for some sort of avenues.
Okay,
I think we look at both options.
All
I will,
options.
I think today's meeting was
Any and
to
all.
not only shock you, I apologize, but also to talk strategies.
Well, take my breath away. I mean, those kinds of, the kind of acceleration in our payments just takes that my breath away. I mean, that's just huge.
I don't disagree.
So something has to change.
I will. We're working on that way.
But Jeff,
Thank you.
20 or 25% of $1,500 is a whole lot smaller than 8 to 10% of millions of
I
dollars,
understand,
right?
yes,
So-
I mean,
But that's why we can self-fund it,
right.
Yes. I
maybe.
agree. Yeah.
It's worth looking at.
It's great.
Well, I'd
The
like
admin
to,
cost would go into the basement, and then we'll just go to the top 12 providers or 15 providers and ask them for discount.
I would look to
I'll
that.
spend time down here and do that with you. Happy to do it. Okay, thank you. I think there's an option. I'm appalled by it as well, and I think it should be self-funded. That's my personal opinion. Okay, can we move on, please? Anyway, here are the rates. I think it's moved at this point because we're not going to move on any direction. That's what it would look like in impact to the overall rate for the associate themselves or the future themselves. Thank you, Adam. Vision proposals. We have IMED in place and we're under contract, so there is no rate increase, but there was some level of discomfort or not the happiest experience with the medical or vision provider. However, I would say with no rate increase, we could defer on a better vision plan until next year, when the budget either allows for it or we can reshop it. But right now, there's no impact on vision rates whatsoever, and we have one more year left on that rating guarantee. Okay, so we don't need to complicate that and go into myriad options. We went to MES, United Healthcare, MetLife, really the three biggest vision vendors in the country, next to IMED. The MES vision had a slightly lower rate as did United Healthcare, but then there's the issue of changing your plan, and that may be more administrative work than you want. I feel continue, please. There are the rates, no rate difference whatsoever to stay with IMED, so that would be our suggestion. We'll continue, please. Keep going. Okay, medical, Blue Cross Blue Shield has the best renewal. Incidentally, I'm praying to have a little bit news for the board by the next meeting, because I went to top leadership of Blue Cross Blue Shield and appealed the rate further. We were hoping that United Healthcare would come in a bit more competitively and could show that to Blue Cross and say, we'll make a move. But they weren't, but I'm using other avenues, and one of those avenues is to try to imply that the losses year after year are going down, and they did go down from last year, so we're trying to look for reduction in trend. Every point makes a big difference on a multi-million-dollar budget, so I'm pushing very hard. I hope that good news by the next meeting. Yes.
When you talk to these folks at Blue Cross Blue Shield or any of these other companies, do they look at our staff retirement statistics? I mean, we're entering a period, have already entered a period, where many of our folks that are at the end of their careers are ready to retire. So we'll be bringing in younger people, right? So do they look at that?
Yeah, they do. If you remember in the very beginning, I said we look at, when you're doing a rate action, you look at demographics.
Yeah.
Young people do older people. Sadly, folks of my age are using healthcare more than folks at my age, probably the entire audience. So, we find ourselves with more medications. I'd like to say we're less healthy than our parents were. we're just staying healthier because of the medications we consume. Really think of the amount of medications. Each individual in your health plan consumes about 13 scripts in a month, on average, including your dependents. It's astronomical how much we're consuming in prescriptions. So I bring that to your attention only because as you do bring in younger folks, your rate action is going to go down, and you'll see reduction.
So are they looking at that curve? I mean, have we built it?
Well, no, we haven't built that. No, they're looking at what exactly. They look in the rearview mirror.
Yeah,
They say, you still have this group, and they're still this age, and they still consume 107%. It's until we can show them that we're using lower ages that will improve.
yeah. But it's somewhat predictable, not
It
entirely.
is good. It just matters what's when, as you talked about health curve, when's that going to occur with the younger ages.
Yeah.
Did you say the average participant in our club had?
Yeah, just remember, I should say, remember in terms of the children and their family.
13 scripts?
Across the family.
Yeah,
All across the
Yeah,
family.
not
Say that's all.
Wow. I'm at 26. No, opioid addiction and the opioid crisis has certainly contributed very much to that. It used to be the number one drug that groups consumed was Lipitor for heart disease. Today it is antidepressants.
Really?
It's the number one consumed drug, yes. Okay, United Healthcare is offering a lower rate, but I still don't buy it. We're going to pursue the avenue we discussed. The vision plan, I think we stay just where we are at this point. I also wanted to continue. Our recommendation is continue just at what I told you as we go forward. There is some wording in your pre-ACA contracts with your collective bargaining units that I think we need to change. We've discussed it with the insurance committee. We just want to add the word proof of other coverage if we allow some of the waive off for cash payment. So we do have in our plan that box that if you waive off the plan, we'll give you cash. But we have to have proof of credible coverage, and that's in the ACA. So technically, we have to apply for that by the new wording in the next year, if you don't mind. Make that change, we'll be happy, and we'll be in complete compliance with the IRS. The other thing is, too, I've negotiated on behalf of our employer groups, LifeLock, given the recent issue we've had with Equifax and 143 million Social Security numbers out there. So we now have a much discounted group rate for anyone who voluntarily purchased. This is not a decision you need to make financially, but we would like the permission to offer it to your members during the time of open enrollment so that they can protect their online identity. We think it's important, and we think we send a message from the board that your online identity is important to you as well. That's your decision. But we do have, we have negotiated with the biggest in the country to provide it for you. It's just timely. And this is something we have been working on prior to the Equifax debacle. We just knew it was important.
And the percentage of that discount, did you have any?
So it's about 25%.
So we have 25% discount.
Off of retail rates for their standard program is. Takes it down to roughly, please don't quote me, but this on group size, but around $3.80, I believe it is, per pay period, per member takes it. But their family members can get in, and their dependents can get in.
That's an annual contract or what?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So they do assume that you're payroll deducting that on a voluntary basis, and they ask that the member stays on 12 months. Although there's no enforcement. Okay. Is anyone in the audience or anyone here has ever had their identity taken? You could. This is the financial loss, so it's covered up to $1 million. It's the loss of time and education. That's really fun. So if we continue, please, we'll move forward. There's the summary of the rates. That's really it. It's your dental, your vision, your medical. We're still working on the medical. We'll bring in dental options on the next meeting. Vision probably stay where it is. And you can make a decision on how office it's appropriate so we can use them.
I would suggest, of course, you know better than I do, I would suggest that when you're negotiating for that, you talk about self-insured and say, we might go to self-insured, we can't come down to it.
I certainly have not use every
I know you would, I just.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for that information.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have the non-business consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion in regard to.
That the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through G.
I'd like to make a motion in regard to the non-business consent agenda, and that is to move item E from the non-business consent agenda so that it can be considered separate.
We have a second.
I'll second
Okay. Discussion?
What is,
I'll say something about this.
Well, let me just, this is the item with the approval of board member conference travel expenses. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, after reviewing the backup on this, I think that it would be a good thing for the board to become more informed on anything to do with operations and with running, although we certainly have a superintendent and a whole staff to take care of various kinds of operational things. But in general, I mean, education's a great thing, right? That's why we're all here. But I would like to see all of us participate in whatever training there might be available if it's pertinent to our job. And so, although there might be occasions where individuals might need to be trained in particular some subject, I can imagine a case where there might be the way to go. But in general, I think that it would be best for the board to be on the same page and about the same level of knowledge and expertise and so on. And the one way to achieve that, perhaps the best and most cost-effective way to achieve that, is to bring someone in. We recently did have activity out at Tisch College, a so-called retreat, where we did bring in a person as a facilitator, and I think we accomplished quite a lot, and I think it's very cost-effective. So I'd like to see more of that kind of thing happen, and a little bit concerned, especially during the time of deficit spending. When we look at a particular individual going to a particular event or class or whatever it might be, and I'm speaking generically, it's expensive. It's very expensive. You know, and I think we have to be very careful about how we spend our dollars when we don't have enough to spend as it is. But again, I want to go on record as saying that I'm in favor of each of us learning as much as we can and applying that knowledge in the best way we can as we set policy. And the same thing would go, of course, for our staff, for our superintendent. You know, whenever there's a need for additional training, especially for those that are in the executive aspect of this district, that we have to consider those costs. But in particular, an individual board member going off to a seminar or a class or a conference or any of those things, I think we have to look very carefully at something like that. And I would generally say it'd be much better for us if we brought the training in-house and all participated in it.
And we're currently waiting on some confirmation on a date that was put out for an all-board training.
I echo that same sentiment.
Yeah, I also agree. And Cindy, do you know, in the past, I know, you know, we've been to III. Do you know roughly what it costs for the district to send?
I would have to look. I mean, it's in the thousands because
Yeah.
it's probably like 6,000-7,000. And I'm just kind of remembering when we did that. And that was back 5-6 years ago.
Melissa and I looked at that this morning. It was 2013. It was the last time that any board member has attended the III conference.
I feel it's very different. The concept of attending a conference and getting a broad education and participating in that particular kind of forum is different than sending somebody off with board money off to become an authority in a particular area. I don't think, I see that as being non-productive. I think we all have to become educated in any particular thing that affects the board. I feel that we all, as a group, should become educated in something so that then we move as a group rather than have somebody speak authoritatively in this particular area that says, hey, I went to a particular seminar, you sent me to that seminar to become educated in this particular thing, therefore I'm going to speak with authority to the board. I just don't see that as being done.
I guess the motion that you raised earlier, Jeff, was to remove item E from the consent agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is what we're talking about now. The value of attending conferences is
right.
Is not about removing this from the agenda. Why are we removing this from the agenda? Why do you want to?
Because it has, I feel that it has to be voted on by itself rather than voting on it as as a group. In other words, all of those things have to be voted in.
Separate vote and would not.
It is a different enough type of object
It is.
that it.
And I have an additional one as well.
Okay.
And I think also too, looking at it financially, we could probably get a better bang for our buck by, if we bring somebody in that can help us, or, you know, refer websites or whatever to self-educated.
That's agreed, but that's back on the subject of how we
But you're
get,
talking
how we
about
get
what?
educated. I'm talking about the more technical issue of,
Yeah.
are we pulling this out of the consent agenda or not?
Yes.
And,
So now-
you know, we haven't voted to
We have
do
a
that.
motion.
We have a motion, we'll need a roll call, so removing it and voting on it separate.
And just to go along to what Carrie said, I agree with what you said. I think we would be better to get all trained, and we could spend the money a lot wiser that way. So I agree with what's been said.
What the point of order is that we're moving it so that we can vote on it as separate.
Okay.
So we have a motion, right?
We have a motion, so we need roll call on whether or not you want to move the item.
I second that motion.
So
We've had discussion now.
we're voting on removing it right now.
You're voting on moving it from the non-business consent agenda to a separate item.
Correct.
Okay, so roll call then.
Carrie Millett,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Alford.
Yes. I have an additional motion under the same heading. I move that we remove Alicia Lavender from item B under the non-business consent.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
I'm saying.
Jeff Alford,
Yes.
Carrie Millett,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to go now back and read the original motion. That the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through, let's see, D and F through G. As amended. Okay,
Second.
so now we need a motion and a second.
I move that we approve the zoning items under non-business consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jeff Alford,
Yes.
Carrie Millett,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Okay, next we have the business consent agenda.
Do you want to go back to item B and vote on that?
Will we set that separately?
Yes.
Any motion?
So
We pulled item E out, so
now we need to vote on it.
yes.
Okay.
Questions, discussion, of course.
Okay, so that the Board of Education approve the estimated travel expenses for Valerie Penny Hernandez to attend the joint conference being held November 17th through 19th, 2017 in Chicago, Illinois. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Discussion, please.
Oh, sure.
Has this, okay, this is estimated as, so this money has not been spent by the.
Correct. And this is just the travel, this is not the conference, money for the conference.
And it's in Chicago. And we have an estimate of how much travel money for Chicago.
That includes the conference amount.
Oh, it does?
It does include the conference.
And the yes, conference fees, $465.
3 nights.
Okay.
Are you good for roll call?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
So wait, clarification. So at this point, we are voting whether or not to award that money to go to this conference.
Correct.
Correct?
No, hold on. Are we,
Is that?
we pulled it.
to vote on it separately.
All right. So now we're voting on whether or not, yes, we're gonna give it to her, no, we're not. All right, we're good.
Point of order.
No.
Jeff Albrecht,
No.
Terry Millat,
No.
Victoria Newport,
No.
Howard Solomon,
No.
Now we
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, now we're on business consent agenda. That the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through D. Do we have a motion?
So, second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Next, we have business and finance bond restructuring, and this is an action item. And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy before we read the actual.
At the last board meeting, we had Liz Hennessy here from Raymond James and we Adrian Booker from Ellers and went through the bond restructuring presentation and also their roles in that process. The recommendation of the board was to take this to our FFAC committee meeting, which we met on September the 14th. And as Victoria mentioned, we did go through the presentation. There were a couple of minor tweaks to it because there were some interest rate changes, as well as showing the break-even point between the two different options, and that's attached to the board agenda item. After FFAC looked at each of the presentations, the recommendation that they're making is to look at well, there's two options. Let me go back. There's the option to refund all the bonds all at once in October, or to split the two in half and do half in October and the other half in January to take advantage of bank qualification status, which will get us a lower interest rate. After we talked about this at FFAC, the option that they're recommending is option 2, to refund in half, so we can take advantage of that lower interest rate, which based on current rates would save us about $391,000 over the life of the bonds. That break-even point is about 48 basis points, or a little less than 0.5%. So if rates were to go up from the time they were refunded in October to January, they have to go up that much in order for those savings to be basically lost, or we would be back to where we started right now. Also, that option is to, if rates did go up within the next few weeks, that's not anticipated, but you never know what can happen in the interest rate environment. It gives that flexibility to the administration to make the call to do the bonds all at once if we see that those rates are really starting to go up too high. We do not want to wait until January. So that's the recommendation that FFAC has put out there to the.
That's option 2.
That's option 2, yes.
Mm-hmm. Any questions on that? Any questions on that?
Thank you.
Let's read the action item. That the Board of Education approve FFAC's recommendation to choose bond restructuring option number 2, refund approximately $8.5 million in October of 2017 and $8.5 million in January 2018 in order to issue less than $10 million in each calendar year to take advantage of bank qualified interest rates and give administration the ability to issue all the bonds in October 2017. Option number 1, if interest rates spike unexpectedly. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Terry Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Now, the next two items will start with the parameters resolution. Now, this is the formal process to authorize the administration, which would be myself and Victoria as the board president. The parameters resolution puts in the parameters in terms of how those bonds will get issued, and it gives a time frame where those can get issued. I believe it's like all the way through March, but we obviously wouldn't, do it all the way then. And it gives the dollar amount in terms of what that parameters looks like, as well as having the option to do all at once or to split the two in half. So this is kind of the formal process that the board has to take to adopt that parameters resolution. And then the next agenda item right after that is to adopt the escrow agreement resolution as well as part of the bond restructuring process. And all these documents have been reviewed by Chapman and Cutler with our bond counsel, in Shaw as well. Liz Hennessy and Adrian Booker, so everybody's looking at this stuff, and I did it as well, so it's a lot of information, but everybody's got their eyes on it, so, but this is the formal process that needs to happen.
Next, we have the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $17,800,000 general obligation refunding school bonds for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with Raymond James and Associates, Inc. in connection with the proposed sale of said bonds. And this is an action item. I think we good?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Gary Millet.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Howard Song.
Yes.
Next, we have the resolution authorizing and directing the execution of one or more escrow agreements in connection with the issue of not to exceed $17,800,000 general obligation refunding school bonds. And this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
So
Second.
Discussion?
Yep, pretty much this is again, just another part of the process.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Gary Millet.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Howard Song.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next, we have the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget adoption. This is an action item that the Board of Education adopt the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
And I'll just quickly go through, just an update as to since we presented the tentative budget back on August 1st, we have had some good news and some changes. So we'll get that. Since the budget was tentatively presented, we did get a school funding formula that was passed by the state back on August 31st. So briefly, I'm going to go through what that looks like. It's a very complicated formula. The state is still in the process of calculating what those numbers are going to look like. But we do have some knowns at this point that we're using for our budget for 17-18. So again, like I mentioned, the new, what they call this is Senate Bill 1947, which is now called the Evidence-Based Funding for Student Success Act, which is passed on August 31st. The basis of the formula is that it ties school funding to evidence-based practices that research has shown that enhances student achievement. And this formula has really been in the making for a couple of years, probably like 3 or 4 years actually. And it really does go through a lot of different data. And it looks very different than what we are used to in terms of the major general state aid formula. So that's why it's going to take some time for the state to really go through all the different data points it needs to in order to get these calculations done. The basis of this is that each school district is treated individually and an adequacy target is calculated for each district. The concept is that new dollars are to go to the neediest district that are the furthest from their adequacy target. And that in the main reason why this thing did pass, because there was some back and forth originally about some districts might lose monies, more might gain. The whole point was no district was going to lose any money. So they were going to have a hold harmless amount, is basically what they call it. So for us, go to the next page. The new funding formula, again, like I said, looks really different. What it's doing is it's combining some of the components that were in, we'll call it the past formula. It's combining general state aid, it's combining special education personnel reimbursement, special ed funding for children with special services, special ed summer school, and also bilingual, because that is going to be one of a lot of components that are within the new formula. So they're combining all those funds, and for fiscal year 17, the total that we were funded for all those programs is about $22.8 million. That is what they're calling the base funding minimum, or the hold harmless amount. So we will, in fiscal year 18, for all those together, receive that same amount. So when we did the budget, we were able to increase our revenues, and I'll get into that in a minute, because we know that this is what they're gonna fund for us at very minimum for fiscal year 18 for these particular programs. So again, every district keeps the amount of the state funding from fiscal year 17, which is the additional, what they call the initial base funding minimum. Going forward, no district will receive less than state funding that it received in the prior year. So they're always setting that base minimum on a year-to-year basis. If the state doesn't appropriate enough to cover the cost of this base funding minimum, then the funds are removed first from those districts that are more close to adequacy, which is a better system than what we had before when they would just prorate for every district. So really districts that didn't get a lot in general state aid didn't lose a lot. Those that got more lost a lot. This way it's a little more equitable in terms of how they're going to redistribute those funds. And again, no district loses money at the starting point of what they had started for from the fiscal 17 model. So this new formula completely replaces general state aid. Effective in this fiscal year. So again, we will not see that formula being used at all. They're using components of it within the whole structure of the formula, like the local funding amounts, but the formula looks completely different. So a real brief, and again, this is still being looked at in terms of how these numbers will look, but this is just a real brief summary of how they're going through that process. For each district, they're going to calculate an adequacy target, and they calculate the local capacity, which is similar to what is being done now in the general state aid formula based on your property tax base. They will calculate what the state contribution is supposed to be, and then they will add the local and the state to come up with to determine overall adequacy. Then they or determine how much will go to that adequacy. Then they compare it to the adequacy to come up with how far away is your district from that tiered number, that adequacy number. So there's going to be 4 tiers that have been established. Tier 1 is the farthest away from adequacy, so those districts that are the neediest. Tier 4 is the ones that are at adequate or even above adequacy. I think we may fall in Tier 2. I don't know that for sure yet. So that would mean, based on the formula, we would probably get additional dollars, but I just don't know what that looks like yet until the state runs those calculations. The new formula utilizes a lot of data elements, and there are a lot of them. I can to the received data PowerPoint that went into a little more detail, so you can kind of know what those data points look like, but there's a lot of them out there, so it's really going to take the state some time to go through all that process. So when they're available, I will absolutely let you guys know what that looks like. So how does that change our budget for this fiscal year? Again, this is what was presented on August 1st. If you remember, the board had decided to use the 95% proration. Again, that's sort of the old way now, but that was really where our jumping off point was for the tentative budget. So we were at that point looking at about a $1.7 million deficit, which would leave us with an estimated balance of about $23.5 million, or about 28% of expenditures. So the next page is what we've changed to the tentative budget since then. So basically, because of this base funding minimum, we were able to increase the state revenue of by $843,000, which again, our base minimum was at $22.8 million. In order to remain conservative, we are not going to put any dollars in for potential increase based on what tier we're in. We just don't know what that's going to look like. So it just doesn't make sense to do that if we don't know that. So we're going to stay conservative.
Is there any correlation to the last slide? I mean, in the number that you're talking about, did we hit our 95? Did we hit our, I mean,
well, I mean, I guess because 95 was a proration based on the general state aid.
Sure.
Now that
different formula entirely.
Exactly.
But
yes.
Do we have, I mean,
I mean, if you look at where we're at 95 and 100%, we're kind of in between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it looks like it's better than the 95.
Yeah, better than 95, not as good as if they kept it the same and funded us at 100%.
Right.
But again, that was, I'm guessing talking pure numbers. I think that the formula is a better formula because it does go through a lot of the adequacy, evidence-based model. It takes into consideration your low income percentages, your special education population, your ELL students, bilingual students, knowing that those students will cost additional dollars to support. So I think from that perspective, it'll be interesting to see how this works out in the long term. I think it was really well thought out. And it was a battle down the state to basically get this funded. So, you know, we'll just have to see how the numbers fall out from year to year. But I mean, there's a lot of components in there that make a lot of sense in terms of how that formula is going to work.
Are the data elements, the components agreed upon, or is that
Yes.
possibly going to change?
Well, from what I understand, I mean, that's in the law, so they are agreed upon. It's actually very specific as to what those.
So when we find out whether we're tier 2 or not, that's dependent on these elements. I
Yes.
just want to make sure, or know, rather, I
Yes.
can't make sure, but to know whether that's something that's a moving target or
No.
whether that's fixed in.
That's fixed within the
Statute
statute,
itself.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. It's pretty specific.
So for districts like ours that are getting increasingly challenging numbers of free and reduced lunch and poverty and all the other stuff that we're getting, this is addressing those challenges.
Yes.
So there's an upside to our otherwise challenged position.
Yeah, I mean, because
So-
it's recognizing that it is, it's just more expensive to support those.
Absolutely.
To support those students, so it does recognize that.
So the so-called adequacy target is probably then determined by these various elements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just the
So
principle.
the whole harmless number is the one that we're basing things off of.
Yes.
But in our minds and our basically tendency to predict what's going to happen, could we predict a number that was ever so slightly higher than the whole helpless number so that the budget balances?
Harmless, Howard, we're not helpless. We're just going.
Well, that's debatable, Gary.
It depends on who's grabbed.
I mean, from a conservative perspective, the known is the 22.8 million. Do I feel confident that we're gonna get additional? You know, I'm a pretty conservative person, I think, and you know, I think it's better than 50-50, to be honest with you.
Would there be any advantage to saying the budget is balanced instead of at a shortage?
I would hesitate to do that because it's not a known.
Yeah, I would too. Unless we know we have that.
Yeah.
The money's not there. We can't spend it if we don't know that
Yeah.
it's there.
And I would rather come here in a couple of months and say, we're gonna do another X amount, and we can always amend a budget if we wanted to.
I would rather you do that too.
Yeah, amending the budget really is just going through the same process, but yeah, so I mean, that's.
And keep in mind that the way this works apparently, if the state does not appropriate enough, they will start pulling back according to what tier you're in and how far from an adequacy you are.
Right, exactly.
So again, a good reason to be conservative.
And again, the formula too now is not, it's based on student enrollment, not on student attendance. So that's a big change in the formula as well. And again, how that's gonna flow, I'm really interested to see what it's all gonna look like, when it's all said and done.
And they're gonna, Cindy, they're gonna check our student enrollment twice a year now,
Right.
instead of the best 3 months
Mhm.
of attendance. So it's gonna be, what, October 1 and March 1?
It'll be the regular fall housing, which is like September 30th, October 1, and then in March. And then they also look at the special education numbers as well, and look at those, yes, I think it's the December 1 number that they look at there. So
December
they'll-
1?
Yeah, I think it is, so. So no, they'll be checking those data points, and then it's gonna be a 3-year average. You know, it's not gonna be just that number for that year, it's gonna be averaged as well, so. So, and then also at the moment, the district is owed about 2.1 million from fiscal year 17's numbers for state categorical payments. Have not heard when we're gonna receive those yet. So at this point, we haven't included them in our fiscal year 17 revenues, as well as we're not gonna include them in the budget, because again, we just don't know the status of that. So again, we're being conservative in both aspects.
And those aren't vouchered right now?
They're vouchered, they haven't been dispersed by the controller. Yeah. A vouchered meaning that the ISD said, yes, these are okay to pay, The controller just doesn't have money to
What about us? Have we paid any of this out of the fund balance?
pay any of,
These funds that are owed us?
they're not within our fund balance right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I mean, meaning that, yeah,
I mean, this is money that they give to us that then we give to someone, right?
well, it's part of our fund balance that determines, our.
Okay, so we don't have any outstanding invoices or
Oh, no,
salary
no.
or whatever, okay? It
We
just
pay our bills on time.
cause the fund balance to go up.
Right, exactly. No. We're not holding anything because we haven't received.
That's
that.
what I was wondering, okay.
Unlike the state.
Unlike the state, exactly. So I'll quickly go through here. So basically, the only thing that has changed on this is that additional $843,000 from the base funding minimum amount. And again, the next slide is our pie chart, which shows our operating revenues, our local, which is our property taxes and student fees, state sources, which is, well, it was general state aid level. It's probably going to be called something different now. And our federal sources, so you can see how that gets split out in totality. So our total operating revenue about 83.2 million. Our expenditures, we haven't changed those at all, those have stayed the same, so it's really just the revenue that we've changed. And then the next slide is that breakdown of the expenditures by the various different objects is what they're called. So we have about 84.1 million in expenditures, most of those being salaries and benefits. We had that benefit talk earlier. And then also purchase services, which is for student, Aramark, and liability, legal costs, materials, capital outlay, and then other, which the big portion of that is tuition for special education students. So the next slide is a summary of our expenditures and revenues and where we stand on each of the funds. So you can see in the total operating funds, which is really what we focus on, we're looking at about $900,000 deficit compared to we're looking at about $1.7 million when we're at the previous tentative budget. So that when it's all said and done, for 6/30/18, we're estimating an operating fund balance of about 24.3 million, which is about 28, almost 29% of expenditures, which keeps us in our 15 to 25% fund balance policy range. And the next slide is, this is a slide that I always put in here that shows historically where we're at and put the bars in terms of what our revenue and expenditures were. And where that red line is our fund balance, which we've been able to keep fairly flat and above zero, obviously. So that is always good news. And then the next is, again, also future considerations. We always want to look at cost benefit analysis of all our programs, the final ISB calculations based on our new funding formula, a property tax freeze. I mean, that I leave it out there because it might be something that we're going to solve, because it really wasn't something that was addressed in this funding model, so it might be something that comes up again, so we want to keep that in the back burner. Again, pension payments, that's, again, something that still hasn't been solved, but, so we want to keep that out there as a possibility that it may occur, not incorporated within the budget, but something we want to always remember. Delayed payments, I checked the website, the controller website on the 14th, and the state owed everybody about $15.7 billion. That number just continues to keep going up. So again, we're waiting for that 2.1 million from the 16-17 payments. And of course, the importance of remaining, keeping that bond rating up. We have now that we've passed the resolution, we're getting ready for a bond rating call that will occur the week after next. So they're prepping me for that. And I think I have some good data to show them, and I think the conservative stance we're taking, I think, is possible. That is the budget. Questions?
Yeah, the first thing I think about is the line that shows the fund balance, and it looks better than it has in the last several years as far as projection going forward. Mm-hmm. But what worries me is the 15.7 billion unpaid by the state and the potential that they can yank back, what they're now telling us they're going to give us. So has anything really changed? I mean, what's the reality of that line? It looks good. I mean, seeing that little bump out there in a more flat rather than a slowly reducing fund balance, that looks better. But
I think we've responded to that, and we've remained conservative. I mean, that's all you can do with the unknowns. As well as because of the way we, handle, we're modified accrual and we defer our local property taxes, meaning that we're always pushing that revenue out into the next fiscal year. So really at 6/30 for us, that's the lowest fund balance that we will ever have. For a lot of other districts that don't do that, 6/30 is their highest fund balance because let's say they're on a cash basis and they're getting their tax. You usually get half of your taxes from your levy before the fiscal year is ended. So they're booking that as revenue. We don't do that. We push it out. So it gives us that opportunity to have, number one, cash in the bank, we have the cash flow, and then to be able to respond better in front of things rather than being reactive.
It sends a more realistic message that way.
Yeah, because we're matching period to period. I won't get into the accounting aspects, but it's a better way to look at the trends because it's all combined in correct periods.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Milat.
Yes.
Terry Duport.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Alden.
Yes.
Next, we have the amendment to the intergovernmental tax increment financing agreement between the city of Dekalb and Dekalb Regional School District 428 TIP project. And this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the amendment to the intergovernmental tax increment financing agreement between the city of Dekalb for certain facility improvements as presented.
Just real briefly, we've been working with the city of DeKalb to amend the $2 million project TIF intergovernmental agreement that provided some improvements that we did to Founders and Clinton Rosette. We've received about $1.8 million from the city for reimbursement for those projects. There's about $200,000 left. We were able to negotiate an amendment where they were reimburse us for the Founders Tower repair that we did last year, as well as leaving about $51,000 left to cover some of the costs for the Clinton Rosette High project. So they approved this at their city council meeting on the 11th, and now we just need to approve it as well here, so they can give us a reimbursement.
Questions for Cindy?
Does that leave us anything that we can direct towards getting air conditioning into Lincoln?
Unfortunately not, because those projects qualify because they were within TIF districts. So Clinton Rosette and Founders were within the TIFs. So that's why these funds were able to be appropriated to the district, but they had to be used in areas where they are within the TIF boundaries. Unfortunately, Lincoln is not in one of the TIF boundaries.
Thank you. At this very moment, the committee of the whole is probably talking about tips, right? And I would love to be there if it was on a different night.
Yeah, I'll be watching it.
Yeah.
We get done really quickly.
Actually, the motion. Actually, somebody make a motion in a second.
So, second.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Alden.
Yes.
Mayor Milat.
Yes.
Terry Duport.
Yes. Okay, next we have new business and administration. And this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the recommended revisions to Board of Education policy as attached. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, please. I'd like to recommend that item 228.3, which is the closed meeting minutes, not be adopted, put off until May of 2018, with the thought in mind that we're conducting closed sessions currently using the form that we've been using for a long time. It includes a number of recommendations, but within this, I'd like to just make sure that we are able to keep things going along as they have been going. Changing to the new form would mandate that every item that is listed at the beginning of, prior to adjournment into closed session, be indeed reported by the secretary as something reserved. So for instance, tonight there were 6 items.
And they would have to be itemized.
They would have to be itemized, and we can avoid that itemization until such time as we bring in we elect new officers, which is scheduled to be on a yearly basis going on in May. And continue to do things as we have been until then. That's one change that I would like to make in this. Another one is that we have improved situations considerably by naming our current Human Resources Director, Sarah, as the non-discrimination coordinator. But rather than have an individual, and this is not a reflection on Sarah, could we just tie it to the position of the Human Resources Director who will do this so that it becomes policy, that becomes something that's permanent?
I think on the form card, we have to name an individual. It asks to name the individual who is responsible.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the policy has to be that.
But what if that person were sick or something to that effect and was replaced by a stand-in interim? Then the form would no longer be correct.
Could we name her name or say, or an approved,
Designee.
pardon?
Approved designee.
Yeah.
Or authorized by the superintendent, someone authorized by the superintendent to stand in for that person.
There's got to be some provision there, or else you have to refile.
Could we do that, Jamie?
Um,
In other words, give you the authority to make a change in that person if that person's not able to do that.
you know, I've got to look.
Okay. And by the way, when we talk about it here, by the way, what's the mechanism for making those changes that are recommended by Howard? I have to read motion.
No, because the form has not been filled in and sent yet. So what we would have to do is change it so that we just check a different column and then put the date that we anticipate in the column, which will be the second meeting in May 2018.
So we can vote as moved.
We could vote as moved.
With the document.
220. 220.
Howard, I guess on that point of putting the date, there, I'm not sure we should because we don't know if it will change on that date or not.
Okay, then let's just,
You put that before. Something like that.
then let's just not adopt it. We can change it to the not adopted column.
Okay.
And we can revisit it.
That's what we check. See, on the form itself, they're asking for the name and email, telephone, everything of the non-discrimination coordinator. It has to be listed on the.
Heaven forbid something should happen to Sarah, we would not be able to adjudicate anything.
You can have additional complaint managers, though, who can be named then by the superintendent.
Okay, that would be satisfactory to me. Thank you.
So, point of order, are we going to the,
So the
adopting
only,
it as written, or are we changing
it would have to be the recommendation. We would not be able to accept the recommendation because the recommendation is outside. We would have to change the recommendation. So I'd like to, then let me make a motion or
Okay.
to move that we,
We're adapting the motion, right?
so we're changing the motion to as recommended, with the exception of a non-adoption of 220.
Okay, I withdraw my motion, you're making the motion now,
Yes,
right?
yes,
You're making the motion with those adaptations.
with
those adaptations.
And 220 is that we will continue to use the form that we used to go into closed session.
if we don't adopt it now, we'll continue to use it.
So when I fill out the sheet, I'll just check it as not adopted.
So then we need to vote on Howard's motion.
Yes.
Good.
And second,
Yeah, you said
I have a second Howard motion.
roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Terry Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes. Thank you.
And now we will vote on the list here. Let me just read it one more time. That the Board of Education approve the recommended revisions to Board of Education policy as amended.
As
As amended. So do we have a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Any more discussion? Okay.